Hello everyone, it's Olivia here, aka Story Minded, and I thought I would just do a really quick update since I haven't posted a video in ages because I've been sort of really busy as usual with my apprenticeship, and I've been doing a lot of different things with my apprenticeship. Sorry about that, I was just closing my door. That's my family. It's downstairs. So yeah, a lot has been happening, so I thought I'd sort of do a bit of a writing update, I guess, in a way. I haven't actually done any writing updates, although I think they'd be really fun to start doing, but I might start them next year, so I can start on January, because the way my brain works, I like things to be quite chronological, if that makes sense. But with my apprenticeship, I had the opportunity to run, well, I had to, but it was great. I had to run a extracurricular activity. So of course, with my love of writing, I decided to run a mini creative writing session, and quite a lot of sort of the first year students I work with came, and one of my second year students came, and it was really positive. Had a great time, I got lovely feedback from all of them, and I was just buzzing because I got to do a bit of creative writing, but it wasn't like a creative writing tutorial. I just wanted it to be fun, and I explained it's a really great way to relieve stress, and it was nice because obviously the second student, she does creative writing already, but sadly it's the last year they're running creative writing at the college I work for, which is so sad because I myself, when I was a student there, did creative writing. And yeah, two of the first year students also wrote outside of college, so that was really nice. We had some different conversations, and it was just basically different writing exercises that they could use and approach, and I got some of them to share their work, and I shared some of my examples and just sort of explained, you know, you should never worry about first drafts, they can always be edited, and it's just fun. So it was a really great experience for me and gave me a lot of confidence. I can't believe I actually sort of created something and delivered it, and yeah, I felt really positive because creative writing makes me feel confident, so that was really fun. So sort of, this is a really odd video to do, but obviously I haven't had a chance to write as much lately because of all the massive things I've been doing for my apprenticeship. I can just bring up the document to prove that I have been writing, because I've managed to do some writing. I just need to find my competition tracker, which is not as glamorous as it sounds. It's just like a Word document that I use if my computer's going to wake up and load it. You can probably hear it humming in the background, or whirring, whatever sound device you want to use to call it. It sounds like an aeroplane taking off half the time. Hooray, let's go down. Okay, so I've entered, well, obviously for each new year I've started to do like when I entered a competition, so this is for 2017, these are the pieces of writing I've done. So there was a Jane Austen competition that is actually still open. It closes at midnight on the 28th of February. And she had to respond to the quote, "Selfishness must always be forgiven, you know, because there is no hope of a cure." So I did a Victorian, I know sort of like Jane Austen was a bit before, her time period was a bit before the Victorian era, but I wrote a Victorian inspired romance, and I don't do much romance writing. And it was very much inspired by Oscar Wilde. I don't even mention Oscar Wilde because I love him as a writer, and his life is just so interesting. And so I did the quote inspired me to write a romance story about a man, and Ernest, because Oscar Wilde had a character called Ernest in his plays, the importance of being earnest, and I really liked that as a name. So it's about Ernest, who is imprisoned because of gross indecency, or also known as homosexuality. And his wife, Lavender, comes to visit him in prison and basically reveals the fact that she, sort of as the trial was progressing, everything she knew, but there's this part of it where there's this love letter, and she reads it out, and she realises that it was never meant for her, it was meant for his lover, Oscar Sharp. and Ernest himself sort of mentions about Oscar Wilde, because the time period it's set is a few years after Oscar Wilde was imprisoned at the same prison as he is, although obviously Oscar Wilde was moved to a lot of different prisons for lots of different reasons. But yeah, so that was a really different thing for me to write, and I was really proud of how it turned out. And it's really sad because Lavender is obviously pregnant with their child, but there's almost like a mercy, almost like a bittersweet mercy in it. She sort of informed the authorities that if Oscar Sharp is tried and obviously found guilty, she asked that they could share the same cell, but she couldn't promise anything, so there's sort of like a really bittersweet sort of tone to it. Oh, and that had to be the title of your work. Selfishness must always be forgiven, you know, because there is no hope of a cure. So that's the sort of first one I entered. Then I did a bit of flash fiction, which is great because I've only ever had like one, apart from when I did creative writing on my course. I had one teeny tiny little idea for a flash fiction story, and it's called Snap. And I was really proud of how that turned out. It's sort of about the silent film era, and it's from the perspective of an actress who, it starts off with all these cameras flashing, and all the men are just like the male reporters, stereotypical, all the male reporters are jostling for the best angle, but then it turns out she's dead and she was murdered by a director who was hiring actresses because she saw through him, and he was like looking at her in a way that made her feel very vulnerable and uncomfortable, and she basically told him to hoof it. She's actually a British actress, but she's sort of out there in America making a name for herself. Her career as a silent film star, sort of like about the art of silence, and I really enjoyed it. It was experimental, so I've entered that one. Then the Plough Poetry Prize. I haven't written a poem in quite a long time, and a poem just popped into my head, so I entered the Plough Poetry Prize, which over here in the UK is like a really prestigious poetry competition. So, you know, for a laugh I entered it. I've entered it once before, but you know, the poem's called The Day the Earth Went Still, and it's quite dystopian in its nature, but it sort of ends with a line about how it's linked with, like, obviously I don't want to quote because you're not allowed to have it published anywhere, but it's to do with how our communication has, like, was completely changed and everything. So it's to do with, like, the invention of the telephone, basically, like the telephone poles sort of became invented, and you know, it's sort of like a bit of a dystopian-ish poem. 1,000 word challenge. This time you had to use the bit of dialogue stop. I think you had to start with it. So I've entered almost like a sci-fi inspired short story called The Selector. And obviously, as the name suggests, it's a 1,000 word challenge, so you can only use 1,000 words. So I've sort of done about there are these two doors. One is like rejection, and the other is, I think the other is called muse or something. And if you go through the rejection door, because there's this lady, the selector, and she decides your fate, basically, and you live in a world where creativity is the most sought after thing. So doctors aren't important, no one is important, but they call them the creatives, and if you're not creative or do not fit the mould of what she's looking for, you're put through the rejection door and basically you die. You're killed. So that was quite a fun one to do. And then the last one is the Young Poets Network. You can enter those competitions up until you're 25, which is great, and I've entered 2 poems, so it's nice I've been getting a bit of poetry done. I've done, one of them's called To a Shell, and the other is This is a Text Just to Say, which has been inspired by the modernist movement, which is something we teach our English literature students, and it's really interesting because we never studied the modernist movement, so it's been a new learning experience for me and my colleagues, and it's been great. So this is a text just to say is inspired by William Carlos Williams' poem, or found poem as they call it, because it never had a title when it was found. This is a note just to say, this is just to say, and it's about a note. It's a really good poem actually, and To a Shell was inspired To a Snail by Marianne Moore, who was another poet of the modernist movement. So those are some of the little writing things I've been up to. And then I'm combining this with a book, because obviously on my channel I do have some like book recommendation sort of things. My colleagues, I don't know if I've mentioned this recently, my colleagues started a book club, but because how busy I was, I managed to read the book on time, but then I had to, I had the opportunity to run like a careers event down the Guildhall for Portsmouth, and sorry about that miscommunication. I thought my mum was calling me, but she wasn't. So yeah, me and some of the other apprentices went to a careers event, Inspire Portsmouth, and we gave information to young people and students from different schools about like different pathways into teaching and stuff like that, and apprenticeships, and promoting our college. And yeah, so sadly that was on the day of the thing, of the book club, so I was tired and I thought, you know, I'm not going to make it. But this was the book for the book club, The Noise of Time. And like, honestly, although I love historical fiction, it's not a book I would have picked up, if I'm completely honest. And I've never really read much of Julian Barnes, though he's written loads of books. And I was surprised. I actually really enjoyed it. It's about Stalin's Russia, and I never really studied that much of Stalin in history. I don't think we even really touched on the Russian Revolution or anything like that. So I found it really interesting. It's sort of about the struggle between art, as in music, and power. And I thought it's really interesting the way it's written. It's like, the structure is quite short, so you have really sort of mini paragraphs and everything, and it's quite disjointed, and it was just really different. So, and I'll read the blurb in case anyone's interested in like getting it. In May 1937, a man in his early 30s waits by the lift of a Leningrad apartment block. He waits all through the night, expecting to be taken away to the big house. Any celebrity he has known in the previous decade is no use to him now, and few who are taken to the big house ever return. So it follows this man, and it's really bad, but I've forgotten his name. It's all about composers as well, like real life composers that lived in Russia. So yeah, it was something different to read, and obviously it was quite annoying because I really want to finish Cloud Atlas, and I've made some more movements through that book, and I'm really enjoying Cloud Atlas because it's just so experimental and so different, but it's a monster of a book. So I'm not finished it yet, but I've reached a new section. It's about 6 interlocking lives, and I'm probably on, don't know, it might be on number 4, so I've still got quite a way to go. Anyway, if anyone's watched this video, thank you. Feel free to comment below about anything writing related, or if you've got any sort of projects on the go at the moment. Oh, and I've even added a tiny bit to my sci-fi novel / novella, because I don't know what it's going to be yet. So at least I've done that, but I really need to try and get on with it. But I don't know, because I've got my nieces coming around today, and the majority of my half term will be spent at college doing apprenticeship stuff, so who knows if I'll get any writing done, but I hope to. And I'm still using my 712 more things to write about book. So anyway, thank you for watching, and see you in another video. Bye!